Welcome to Mandula. We humbly invite you on a journey with us as we explore and deep dive in what it means to be human through this great time of awakening, generously sharing wisdom and practical tools that have helped us on our path of ascension, introducing other conscious leaders within our community to expand the collective mind to new possibilities.
Mandula inspires us to become balanced in body and soul, feminine and masculine, physical and spiritual, creating a bridge between heaven and earth. Within this podcast, we will be communicating with all parts of ourselves, understanding our true essence, discovering our life's calling, transforming and healing ourselves and the people around us. Without further ado, let us begin.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mandula. We are excited to be here today. There's a little bit of excited energy within our weather systems at the moment, which I feel like is going to be a really good way to start conversation and see where it goes. But as you'll know from the last episode, we are really focusing on solutions right now. So just bringing that intention, I guess, into the conversation today to create solutions for humanity.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, so by the time you guys listen to this is going to be well and truly done. But at the moment we've got a cyclone looming off the coast. So it's bringing up a lot of fear in many people. Just go look at Woolies, you'll see that. There is like empty shelves. However, we are solution based. So we never want to ignore fear. Fear is such a potent piece of the puzzle to alchemize to empowerment, right? When we fear something, the fear underlying is always that we actually can't handle it, right? Or it'll bring up something that is overwhelming, or we don't believe that we can handle. So the solution is, how can we take that fear of not being able to handle something and instead empower ourselves to have the right tools, to have the right support system, to have what we need to have in order to know that we have got us 100% of whatever goes down. We've got our own back, and or until we have our own back, we've created a supportive system around us that we know has got our back until we can do that for ourselves.
And so how would you say that shows up for you? Like, how do you see fear within self, and like what's your process that helps you to get to the empowerment once you've acknowledged that it's there?
I'm a very feeling person, so I feel a lot in my body. I actually woke up in the middle of the night last night because cyclones as such don't physically scare me. In fact, the energy of a cyclone excites me. And I know that we can utilize energy. But I did have a moment last night. I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was so eerily calm. And knowing what's coming did bring up something in me. My sleep was more important, so I went back to sleep. But I did put a little checkpoint on that. I'm going to come back to that. So I haven't actually explored what that would look like for me. But if I was to explore it now with you, I'd be like, okay, well, it was in the middle of the night. The thoughts that came into my mind are, where are my kids in the house? If something was to happen right now, I think the fear was that the biggest thing was to make sure that my family are with me and that they're safe. That's always my heart of the biggest fear, my deepest, darkest fears is my family and what could potentially happen to them, or if I make a choice that could impact them negatively. I'm aware of those suppressed fears, and one by one, when I'm ready, I have been empowering myself to become who I need to become, or to teach my children and my family my wisdom and what I know, so that those fears can hopefully not eventuate, right?
So evolving them. So do you feel like having that, even if it's an internal structure of our priorities, these are the priorities that I want to take care of so that I can not feel in fear, is that what you feel like is the path for you to ease that fear?
Oh, yeah. And it's a little, it is preparation.
Yeah.
So think about this. If a cyclone's looming, what makes us feel better about that? What can we control? We can go and make sure that we've got enough food. We could get generators if we lose power. We can go and do a dump run, make sure that there's no loose objects that can fly around.
Yeah.
So the very masculine doing, taking action aspect of it can absolutely empower us to relax. So if you've got this massive storm surge that's come in overnight and you know that there's nothing that can fly around and you have more of a sense of empowerment to then.
Absolutely.
Like for me, it would be, okay, all of those things are done, so now I can emotionally support my children if they have stuff coming up, because I've taken care of that for me. So what would that look like then to ease their minds and just know that we're right there with them and like this, it's a beautiful example to use, this cyclone, but this is a subject that you can play with, like there's so many fears. We have so many fears within our society of so many things, but it is not something to shy away from. It's to gently investigate is empowerment.
Absolutely. And I think knowledge is power as well. So like there's the physical things that you want to take care of, but also having knowledge. You know, if you're seeing things on the news, and I'm having a lot of people, because the actual eye is meant to hit right where my home is, a lot of people have been messaging me about this and saying, you know, are you, oh my God, are you okay? And it's very hyped because their knowledge is coming from one source. But actually, like being here and living here, it is the most beautiful day today. And because there has been some winds, so that basically the cyclone has come in and it's going back out, and then it's going to be coming back in and that's going to be the big part of the cyclone. But I'm living a completely different reality to what everyone else that's watching the news. And so I think that like it's asking the questions of like, you know, like, I guess it's getting knowledge on like what is the worst case. Like let's actually like play that out and then see what we would want to know from that. So like what is the highest potential of the water rising around us? Like just to have like that knowledge of, okay, well this may be something that we need to look at. Or, you know, like my mum's such a beautiful example for me. Like she really lives in the depths of the fear a lot of the time, so I can play things out a lot with her and really ask her, okay, well what do you actually know about what's going on? Is it where's that information coming from, and are you tuning in with yourself right now and feeling into your own intuition on, is this fear-based coming from external, or do I actually feel worried here? Because the only thing we can actually work on is what is occurring for us, right? Because every person is going to feel differently about every situation. Like there are, you know, I've got my kids in the home at the moment. My son is very much like excited, and I have just been absolutely thriving in his imagination of what he thinks is going to occur. Like he thinks he's so into fishing at the moment. He thinks he's going to be able to fish from our house, like off the roof. That's what he's thinking in his head. And he's like, oh, and I'm going to get a motor for the kayak. Can we do that this afternoon? Because then we're just going to go visit our friends on our kayaks. Like, you know, the excitement around that and the imaginatory, don't know if that's a word, but like that imagination and how like it can bring one person to full excitement. And then my daughter, on the other hand, is feeding off not her own feelings towards it, but she's kind of gauging it off how other people are feeling about it. And so everybody is going to go through their own feelings around the one subject. But what I truly believe and what I'm recognizing is that I believe that the cyclone itself is just showing us into ourselves, into the parts of us that are ready to be released and let go of. So if we know that fear on the chart is a low vibrational emotion, and if we are wanting to bring more light into our vessels and live a life from our heart, you know, and vibrationally that's a different place, like we have to bring light down into those places that we fear, so we can make it about the cyclone, but it's actually the fear that exists within us that we're wanting to look at, and then getting like really clear on what that is in all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Where do we go from there?
Well, I think like if we move it away from the cyclone and have a look at things that, bring fear up in us. And like, I feel like I really want to go into, it might be solutions. It feels like strategies of like, and just bounce maybe back and forward into like, how do we look at things that are showing up in our reality, even if they are fear, as an opportunity? That's what's coming through. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, why do I feel to tell? I'm going to tell this story because it's coming to my mind. So I spoke to my dad on the phone before I came here, and he was telling me of a story, which I have heard before, but it's so good that I'm going to retell it in my own words and simplified. Is like an old Cherokee Indian telling the story about the two wolves inside of ourselves. Have you heard it before?
The two wolves sounds familiar, but like, go ahead. I'm not 100% sure.
The story goes that they believe that, that we have two wolves inside of ourselves, like a white wolf and a dark wolf, or a light one.
I've literally just seen a picture of that yesterday on social media.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so like a light wolf and a dark wolf, and one is obviously love and light and positivity, and the other one is like your denser emotions, your anger, your spite, your rebellion, that sort of thing, right? And they're like in this internal fight with each other. And then at the end, the question was asked, well, which one wins? And the answer is the one that you feed. And so that is a solution in itself, right? When we're talking about fear,
let's wrap up the podcast now.
Literally,
that's literally it.
We have
Boom.
nothing more to add. And it's like, okay, well, with any situation that comes up, we can look at it in doom and gloom and negativity, or go into competition, or go into whatever we feed with our thoughts, with our actions, with our who we surround ourselves, whether we put the news on. If the news is giving you, is it amplifying your fear, turn it off, because you're feeding that dark wolf right now. But if you're talking to friends and family who are, okay, well, what if this happens, then I've got a generator. And if this happens, come to my house because we've got lots of food. If that's feeding the white wolf, right? We're in solution mode. We're in empowerment mode. We're in community, and like totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, my husband and myself, we've been quite busy in our external realities for a little while. And so this is like feeding the white wolf. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so nice to have family time and not feel like we need to be out anywhere else, but just to actually come back in and nourish. And so I'm like not even seeing it as a disaster, but as an opportunity for us to really just come back together and reconnect and be in the home and have downtime, and almost like a permission slip from the universe to just like take a break for a minute. Like I'm hoping that all our internet goes down and like we literally just have each other and like have that time to connect, which highlights to me that obviously is something that's a little bit out of balance for me right now, and I'm waiting for a disaster to come to give me the permission to do it. So like we'll definitely, keep that in mind for myself of like, if it doesn't eventuate to that, okay, right, we really need to schedule this in because we don't need to create cyclones to give that to ourselves. But that's the white wolf, right? But I guess my question with that is we can't not acknowledge that fear doesn't exist either. It's like just not feeding the fear, the black wolf, is not going to make it go away. It's a part of our human experience. So that's what was coming through, I guess, as you were communicating about them.
But I feel like I'm really excited because I feel like I'm getting better and better in this. Like I can love the crap out of that dark wolf now. Yeah. So inside myself, like I know, so the white wolf in me absolutely does win and has, say it's the leader, but that white wolf loves that dark wolf because that dark wolf gives me opportunities constantly to up our game. and win and keep getting better, like this cyclone does. Like, it's sad. It's actually really sad that COVID and really big disruptive things actually bring us together better as a society. Usually not straight away, because normally there's a lot of controversy first. But in hindsight, nearly every single time I've seen community come together after the fact. But what if we didn't need something so sinister or something so huge or impactful or potentially devastating? Like, what if we could just create that community without? And the kind of what was highlighted before I came on here, because we kind of tune into what's going on within our weeks and set a theme, and I was like bringing through spiritual empowerment was what was kind of the topic of our conversation today. And so we're kind of like, what does that actually mean as we talk this out? Is something coming through you?
Yeah, it is. So a few people have said to me, and it's something that I just know to be true, I'm here to do really big things on this earth. There is absolutely no way the universe is going to take me out in any way or create any form of destruction that is going to set me back on my path, because there's so much that I'm here to do. And so that spiritual connection, knowing that I'm working with and being in service to, in whatever way that shows up, for me, obviously it is in my organic way that it is for me, but for other people also. And it's like, the empowerment is I feel like I'm untouchable. The cyclone has not happened yet, so to be updated on this. But it just feels like I'm like, there's no way anything's going to happen to my family. Like, so it's almost like I am poo-pooing even the destructive force that this could even be bringing, because I feel like even if it comes, it's going to whirl its way specifically around my home, because
we've seen that so many times when we've gone camping or what have you, like I've been in a tent and we can see this crazy weather forecast and literally it'll go around our campsite. Like, I've seen it time and time again. Not to say that I haven't been through destructive times, but what I do know about life is that sometimes if we allow ourselves to get really comfortable and we're in the mundane, then life has to shake things up in order for us to grow and see what our potential is and evolve and make changes that have maybe needed for quite a while. Unfortunately, that sometimes has to be big and dramatic, but if we were choosing it for ourselves from a place of creation, I don't know that we would have to live there's no right or wrong. But when life brings us challenges, we see what we're made out of. We see what we're capable of, and we band together. And I think what I'm trying to get to is under the banner of spiritual empowerment, like, how do we put the chicken before the egg here? Like, what would it take if we could reverse engineer this to choose spiritual empowerment versus have to fumble our way through fears and everything in order to do it? Like, I see little babies and I get so excited, because the pureness, the innocence, but not only that, like, all babies are pure and innocent, the unique spiritual aspect that they bring is different in every little infant that I know. There's no the same. But imagine if you nurtured that little being and led them through, in a healthy way, through curiosity, to always strive for what else is possible. Like, where could that take? Like, where could that take us? And what would that have looked like if we had been nurtured in the same way?
I think that children are born already knowing what's possible. It's only our conditioning that removes that from them. So it would be actually following their lead. And I watched a podcast the other day. Peter Crone literally said, the most spiritual people you will ever meet are children, because they're
So connected.
They're so connected, and they don't have to be in the white gown and be dressing up to look spiritual or have like all the instruments.
They just are.
They are the potency of spiritualness because they haven't had it conditioned out of them yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're bringing and wrapping all of that back in, like, I think there's a lot to be said about what you're saying. Like, does the universe need to give you a boot up the butt because you're not actually on path, and you know you're not on path, but you're resisting or fearing whatever it is that you have to do to actually hop on path of like who you authentically are and what you're meant to be doing in this world. And maybe they're the ones that are going through right now feeling the force of what's coming and being like, whoa, like, and panicking, because it's the same level of panicking inside of them knowing how far they are off of being the true beings that they were here to be.
It's like cultivating wholeness from yes, like infants and young kids are really connected, but I believe the fear that we face now as adults is a collection of things that have happened to other people, other people's experience, maybe our own experience, but because we haven't been nurtured into wholeness from a young age, right? So we're kind of reverse engineering now all of that. But the fear in itself is that we don't have ourselves. So what if we could go back to infants or guide young kids back to themselves? That's all we're doing. It's just we're guiding them back to themselves. If you're in that situation, what would you do? And if you're in that situation, what would you do? Or in this situation right now, what do you want to do to get across that? Okay, we got to cross that creek. How are we going to get across there? Like, that's where the imagination comes in, right? What you were just describing about the kids. Their imaginations, there's no limits.
And there's no limits to the solutions. So one of the things that I threw an obstacle in for Hayden this morning, because he's like, I don't know why everybody's panic buying. He goes, I don't understand that. And I said to him, well, I said, like, if the flooding gets really bad, like, there might be a portion of time that we just have to stay in the home. And I said, and yes, people go absolutely overboard, but like, do you have the necessities you need to get through? And I'm sure all of our homes have enough canned food, like, that we could get through if need be. But anyway, that I was explaining, that's why people do it. And he's like, yeah, but just get on the kayak and like go to the shops. And I said, yeah, but honey, like, if we're underwater, the shops are going to be underwater too. Like, you're not going to be able to get in there. And he's like, And then he starts going into the imagination and the solutions that can be created, because there's nothing limiting his mind to think that there's not a possibility here.
And there would be nothing that he was unwilling to do in order to do it. And that's right, the willingness. And I think that's what blocks us, right? Because, okay, if we can't get in our car and go and do things like we would normally do, as adults, I'm sorry, but there's so much limitation on our imagination and the access to other solutions, because we're lazy with how we think about things, right? Hang on, if my car doesn't start and I can't drive there, like, but as a child, you'd be like, cool, let's go on an adventure for food. Yeah. Let's go and, like, the expansion of the mind is wide open.
Yeah, Hayden's going to catch the food from our roof. Like, we need not go anywhere. No, I agree. And then if I have a look at my, like, daughter who's going off how other people feel about it, like, it's losing empowerment, right? Because she's like, oh, I don't know for myself what I'd do. So I'm literally right now dictated by how other people are going to create solutions. And so there's like a disempowerment in that, right? And so if I tune into both their bodies, Hayden's days are going slower because he can't wait for it to hit. Whereas Layla, I can feel, is a bit like, I don't know how to feel about this right now. Instead of coming into herself and I guess like creating the solutions or having the knowledge, which is power, like understanding what's happening so that she can then, go into her own intuition and go, oh, okay, cool. Well, if that happens, I'll do this. Like her power's like being given outside of her right now. So yeah, like but this can happen cyclone or not cyclone, right? With any fear, with anything, like, COVID and cyclones are huge events, but this actually occurs in our day-to-day reality with simple things like, I know elderly get to a point where they start fearing driving because they don't feel as competent, or they start to fear because they can't physically protect themselves anymore. Like, what if something happens to me? But I mean, if you actually ask them, they've probably never been beaten up in their life. Like, why are they worried about it now? It's like,
and fear for other people. We fear for ourselves, we can fear for other people. But what I see right now is like two solutions. Like, there's a million, but if I want to talk out two, right? So we can be physically prepared if we want to. If we don't trust that we can be like those kids and have these imagination of solutions, then if it makes you feel safe, then go out and everything that's important to you, make sure you're prepared for those things, like in this situation. So, and even any situation, right? Just if you're going camping and you have anxiety about something, then prepare. Just plan ahead for the things that, worst case scenario, right? So we talk about this quite a bit when we're helping people through anxiety. Okay, take them there. What's the worst case scenario right now? Okay, and if you were in the worst case scenario, what would be the solution then? Or what could you do for yourself, and how could you make yourself feel better? Or like, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, whatever. Like, go there. Allow yourself to go there and then neutralize it from there. Half the time it's not actually what they think it is, right? So there's that aspect of being proactive physically. And then there's like, my son is just a freaking genius, hey? Like, he was up the creek fishing on the weekend. This is a really good example. And my husband called me and he was like, have you heard from your son? And I was like, no. And he said he's up the creek fishing and they haven't taken enough fuel and it's getting dark and the wind's picking up, and what are we going to do about this? And I was like, I was done for the day. I was like, I'm not saving him. But I was like, more than that, this is our son and I know him really better. This is the definition of spiritual empowerment, right? That kid can manifest solutions like what you're saying about Hayden in 2 seconds flat. And I literally said that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you met our son? He will get himself back, and in the most awesome way that it will tell an entertaining story forever, right? Anyway, I just left it because I felt completely at peace. And then my son comes in and he gives me a hug. He's like, hi Mum. And I was like, how was your day? And I heard you were low on fuel. And he was like, oh yeah, it's fine. And I was like, well, what'd you do? And he goes, oh, well, we were just floating up the creek, and then we made friends with someone, just genuinely got chatting. And then he's like, oh, where are you off to? And they said, oh, back to where we were. But they were like, oh, we've got no fuel. And he's like, oh, I've got heaps of fuel. And of course, that's the story of his life. It does not matter where he goes or what he does.
It's a full trust too, because if you really trust that you're supported always, right?
Always.
And then if we take it to our thoughts create our reality, then there's no thoughts creating any opposite effect. So he's in just full trust that it is going to work out. So of course the universe, or his creation, because he creates every moment of his reality, is going to reflect that. Because it's solid in him, right?
It's solid in him, and he's solid in who he is. Like, he's just himself. So you could have someone, and this is where there's a story, and I'm going to try to remember it, but there's a ship in the middle of the ocean that's sinking, and there's this the person that's on the ship that's praying to God and saying, God, please help me. And then there's like a life raft that comes past, and there's another ship, and they're all trying to help him, and he's like, no, God's going to help me. And that was God helping him, right? God was sending help, but he was like, he had it in his mind that it had to be a certain way, so he missed the boat, right? And so Mason is so solid in his personality and who he is. He can make friends anywhere, right? But you could have someone in that same creek that was too scared to have a conversation or feel bad for taking their fuel or whatever, right? But if we can just solidly ask for what we need, solution based, like, he didn't even have to ask for it, it just naturally came up in conversation. But if it doesn't naturally come up, don't be afraid of asking for what you need. That is such a big issue in society.
I feel like this is actually part of our conversation before we hopped on here too, around vulnerably just sharing where you're at.
Yes.
Like, it's like the fear of what will people think of me if I don't have myself? It's, yeah, that's the vulnerability, right? And then I think that comes up, like even me talking about like the elderly and stuff, like them being vulnerable enough to feel like, to be like, I don't feel safe that I can protect myself anymore.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm not sure how, like, I'm not sure if I'm very competent in driving anymore because I'm fearful of maniacs on the road. Or like, you know, sharing where they're at, because you can then follow that and neutralize it. You can,
yeah.
but until you're vulnerable enough to admit it, or, yeah, like, and I think that's, and I clicked to that being.
You're so on it. And I've been there. Like, I've been that person that's Miss Independent, and I'm going to do it, which is fear-based in itself, right?
Yeah.
Of not knowing who you can trust or what you can trust. And so, but I've lived that life of Miss Independent. No, ain't nobody going to help me. I got myself. And I've also lived the polarity of that, which is my existence now. And I tell you what, I will choose this one hands down. And I am super open, super vulnerable now. I've had to work to that. But when if I'm sad and I'm upset and I'm in an environment, I won't hide that.
Yeah.
And if someone approaches me, then I may not go into all the details, but I'll state where I'm at right now. Yeah, I'm not, I will be okay, but I'm not right now.
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole magnitude of solutions. It opens up a whole potentials of beautiful relationships, and not just the ability to help me, but also airing out what potentially could be happening in other people's lives too, that they're too scared and vulnerable to actually communicate. It gives permission. It's like a living example of what is possible when we are brave enough to communicate where we're at.
For our listeners that are tuning into this, if you have never read it, The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown is such an epic read, and it's like it really dives into this, and because it is a part of our human nature to feel vulnerable, but actually pushing through that vulnerability, what's on the other side of that is so powerful. I've read it twice. I actually could read it again. It's been probably 6 years. And I always receive differently every time I read a book that I really love. It's like my new lens is now finding a whole new meaning around it. But it is an amazing book on this.
We even talked about that before we got on here, of like, potentially, are we talking about the same things? Like, even communicating that vulnerably, like, because we live so much life and we talk about so many things, we're like, have we talked about that on a podcast? Have we not talked about that? And like, we just came to the conclusion, we have that full trust that it is the depth. Even if we're covering some of the similar ground, it's the depth and the seeds that are planted, because we've lived this development world for so long, and yet we're still side by side with you, embodying solutions now, or getting that deeper level of vulnerability now, or learning to trust ourselves and that we've got our backs even more. So even if we're spiraling through the same things sometimes, it's for a potent reason.
I always see it, like, I always get this visual of like, it's like a little dot, and then outside of that is like so many different facets, like, so kind of like a cube, but like 100 of them, and it's like there's one topic, but there's so many different facets that you can view that one theme that's like the little ball that sits in the middle. There's not like one way that you can communicate about it. And so for me, like when we were like exploring, have we already communicated about this? I'm like, even if we have, who we were when we did communicate about it would have shifted in so many different ways that our communication would be differently. But second to that, like, I truly believe that we are talking into what's coming up for the collective. And so if we need to revise on a subject that we have already gone on, it's going to come with a different energy, because that's what's needed right now in our collective. And I don't think that we are ever, and this is the humble nature of being spiritual, I don't think we ever are complete in all the facets, because of all the different themes, because we're going to be forever growing. And so for myself personally, like there's new facets that I have been exploring in the past week and a half that have been really dense and really low. And I just know that it's just a new facet of something that I've probably already explored, but I'm getting a different awareness around it and building a different strength internally in myself. And it's like the vulnerability of like, and this is what felt really different for me in the last week and a half, was like the vulnerability of like actually admitting my mental health in the last week and a half has been absolutely like literally communicating to my husband that I don't think the hole that I'm in gets any deeper. It has to be up from now, surely. Like I felt like I was in the lowest part of the trench, but I have like a absolute knowing in me and solidness that whatever it is that I'm exploring down in that trench at the moment is enabling me to go to a different height that I've never experienced before. And so there's almost like I want to be able to, if my friends are like, oh, how are you going? Like actually be in absolute honesty with them and be like, my mental health is like rock bottom at the moment. Because that's loving myself enough to be vulnerable to communicate that, but it's also allowing others to know that like I'm not always like, literally a week before this all occurred, I was like, oh my God, is this our reality now? Is this how we get to live? Like it was such in the polarity that while I've been venturing in the depth of what I've been venturing, I was like, do I have bipolar? Like I could have actually labeled myself, because I'm like,
That's the two wolves though, right?
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like an acceptance in both of them. In the past, I don't feel like when I've gone in the trenches, there's almost been and actually there has been a subtleness of this still occurring this time when I was in it, but like to know everything I know, to have all the tools that I have, and to still be in that trench, it's like that's vulnerable to actually just share that and be like, life's not always going to be like amazing. There's always going to be growth. And right now I'm growing through this. And it's like what I did have this time was, and I just kept repeating to my husband over and over again, we are just facing off with what the potential limitations are that we need to see to go through that glass ceiling to our next level. And even though it feels like our lives have gone 10 steps backwards, it's actually just such a big clearing for us and happening at such a degree so that we can actually break through this. And it does. It feels like there's been a covenant on us. And right now, and what we have been exploring, and we're both in the last 2 days just starting to get like fresh air on it right now. But it's like, oh, I'm starting to see why I had to face off with that. And it's all internal. It can look external, and I have external stories that are occurring, but it's actually, it feels like a death inside of me of who I was, because I'm becoming something else right now. And funny story, and going to reflect that back to the cyclone. Like my language has been, I feel like my root system of who I am has been uprooted, and I'm kind of just hovering right now, and I'm not sure like where I'm going to land and like what that's going to mean and who I'm going to be, like a lot of like uncertainty. But if you have a look at the cyclone right now and my actual reflection to it, I'm completely at peace with it. I feel like I'm absolutely protected. And then when I've communicated with people, I'm like, oh, my only concern would be the trees, because typically they get wet and uprooted. And I'm like, oh, okay, caught that. That's actually just a reflection of me still not having full groundedness and certainty of where I'm going right now. But I do know that it's okay and safe for me to be vulnerable. And that doesn't mean anything about me. I'm not going to be labeled because I'm being vulnerable right now that I've been going through mental health. I also know that I have been working with clients with mental health. And so as a healer, sometimes in my reality, my body will go through things so that I can understand what that person is going through, so that I can match the energy and have the pathway forward, basically. And so there's just like so many different things, and like I think that as a society we want to get vulnerable enough to own where we're at and know that in a week's time, like, what's my truth now? I say this all the time, what my truth is now may be so different in a week's time. And if we were to air this today and then it go out to the public and then them see me next week and I'm completely in a different space and they come up to me and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh, like, no, that was last week.
Sometimes I feel like that between the morning and the afternoon. Like, it's like it can happen that quick.
It actually really can. And it's like, can we be vulnerable enough to like admit and be humble enough to admit that we are where we're at, because we're all going to go through things in life. This is the human experience, and to not make ourselves wrong while we're in it, and just to be where we're at and know that, like, I know I've 100% got me and that I don't need anybody to rescue me in that it's just a period of time that I'm going to get through it.
Yeah, not labeling it as wrong. I feel like this is like the loving of the dark wolf. Instead of starving it, the evolution is to love it, actually, and loving being in those spaces. And that's a practice. It's not 100% of a lifetime of being it made wrong. It's a practice to love those darker times. But like I said, it was last week or the week before, I don't know, timelines are a muffle for me. But I was like in something and my husband's like, what's wrong? And I was like, stop saying it's wrong. I'm like, stop saying it's wrong. There's nothing wrong. Like, I was emotional, but I saw it as beautiful, because what I know now is that when I go, especially women before their periods, right? We've labeled PMS as negative and what have you, but actually in the cycle of being a woman, that is where it comes to light what's not working in your life. It's the gold. It's not wrong. Like, oh my goodness, when we can learn to alchemize that to be wise gold, then we're on it, right? Yeah. Because actually, and this is what I said, I'm like, this is just all the emotion coming up, telling us where within I can't remember what it was, but it was like either within our home or in our business or in our lives or in our relationships, there's something that's wanting to change here. It's not working. And so I trust that now, and I'm getting better at managing it. So I'll usually take myself away so that because I'm human, I'm not perfect, and I never ever want to take it out on other people, but sometimes I do. So that's why I choose personally to take myself for walks or choose solitude, or so I can have the clarity to have a mature conversation about it and say, hey, I feel like we need to make some changes in this area because this is not working.
Yeah, right. So what you just sharing that is a conversation that I've been having in my home of late, where, this is actually making so much sense now. It's like, the same. I'm starting to honor now what my cycle is trying to communicate, especially before the bleed comes in. And it can be different. Sometimes it's emotion. Sometimes it's a rah. Sometimes it's a bitch. Like sometimes it's... But I'm really learning to honor it. And my communication in the home is, can you hold space for me to actually be all of it, to be the mess, to actually project and not take it on board, just to allow the emotion to come out and literally like, again, I'm very visual, but like, it's like, just hold a space for me to let that all out without taking it personally. Can you remain so solid right now for me? Because I know there's wisdom in this, and I don't want to. So because what I used to do in the past, right, was make that wrong about me if I projected it out. But if I announce the elephant beforehand and say, please don't take this personally, allow me to have my feminine rage right now, because it's really potent for me to get out, and it has medicine, and it's going to look messy to begin with. But from that mess, if we just love on it and have compassion for it, it's actually taking us to somewhere that we both actually want.
And the key to whether you do it my way or do it your way is intention, right?
Yeah.
And so our intentions are pure and loving for the people that we love and ourselves. So this is where communication is key, because I've had both. I prefer to take myself away, get clarity, and then have a mature conversation. However, that doesn't always play out, and people usually my husband, he's like, we need to talk about this. And I'm like, if you want to talk about it now, please don't take it personally, because I'm in my rah. And sometimes he's like, I'll take it. Okay, cool. Because he knows it's not personal, but it feels better. He feels more supportive of me, which is beautiful, if he knows a little bit about what's going on, which I'm like, try to decipher that, because I haven't got clarity yet. But he's good at that. He's like, oh, so what I'm hearing is you actually mean this. So there's no right or wrong, okay? But it is about our relationships that we're building in order to be safe. So not every partnership could have those conversations off the bat, right? It's something we've worked towards, but
100%.
It's in my opinion, it should be 100% a goal for every relationship to be able to have the emotion and have a safe place to work through and find a solution in one, right? Like we can, and I mean, we make mistakes. We're human. Sometimes there's so many times, I think I talked about it in the last podcast, where I won't communicate how I'm proud of, but I'll then love myself enough to be like, okay, have the conversation. I didn't actually like how I spoke right then, but I'm going to work on it. And next time I've got a plan. So that's what we were talking about, making the plan so that feels better for me in the moment next time.
Yeah, because so in the past, if I outbursted with that and hadn't had the communication and hadn't set the foundation for it, how I would treat myself for doing such a thing was not very nice. And so now it's like it allows me to go into it without having judgment on myself for doing so. And I do this with my children as well. Like literally when I start feeling it coming up in my body, because usually it's in my feeling body before it becomes like a rah
like
at
overwhelm,
something.
right?
It feels like if I were to say visually what it feels like, I know that it's going against it, but that's how I'm seeing it. It's like a tumbling ball of fire that's coming up that wants to go. And that's what it feels like in my body, and it starts down in my womb, which of course, because it's cycle, that's only just clicked for me now, but it starts in my womb and then I just feel it like gaining momentum until it feels like it needs an outlet. And so I catch it here now, and then I literally will say to my children, there's something coming up in my body right now. I may show up a little bit more frustrated than normal. And you know what? I just have gotten to the point where I'm like, we actually do want to learn to honor the feminine, and the fact that the only way people are created in this reality, of course we need the seed, but like the only way things can come through is through a human female body. And we go through things that the male body just does not have to go through. They don't understand a period. They don't understand what it feels like. They're not in the emotions of it. And I just think as a society that we are getting closer to, definitely in my existence, in my home, of honouring the potency of that.
Oh gosh, there's just so much beauty in what you just said of honouring the feminine as well as honouring the masculine. I think this is where this comes to a societal issue where we've kind of lost a little bit of that, right? Making nothing wrong or right, but what I was saying about I have that Ra coming up, and my husband knows the potency in it, right? So he knows his place also is how do I support you? Because if you go back to tribal times and community times, is that you had the women or the matriarch, right? Or the women went away and the matriarch would kind of lead the tribe. That's the intuition. And this is all part of a cycle.
It
That's
is.
the intuition. And that wasn't just for self. That was for the community, the tribe, the family.
Yep.
So what we're talking about is family. And my husband's 100% on board like now because of that trust that's been built. It's like, it's not about for selfish reasons. It's not go and have your little PMS on your own. It's like, oh, okay, we can utilize this. This is part of the beauty of being a woman and the beauty of being a man, to support that and put the physical foundations in place for it's just how we can work together, which hasn't happened for a lot of generations, but the potential of that co-creation is absolutely what I'm striving for.
Yeah, and do we have time? Ooh, we're getting close. I won't go too deep into it, but I also understand from a male body's perspective in this reality is that hasn't been done very healthy by the feminine. And it has been in the past, there has been manipulation and abuse of that power and all of the things. And so I won't go deeply into that, but I can understand why our men have also lost connection to what that was, because it was not used in an honest way. Yeah. And I think that's where, like, what I'm hearing both of us communicating, and I'm sure there's a lot of women out there that are actually doing it in a way that it's like, it is not abusive the way that I do it. Like, I'm just like, rah, or maybe I've got to go put some music on and like allow that through my body. And I think it comes down to first internally, like we have to honor those cycles and not make them wrong. And this is where I'm going to bring it back to, is like, until we get okay and learn to love that dark wolf within, we can't expect anybody in our external reality to be able to do so. And I think that like it always comes back to create it within self, then start communicating it outside so that we can create this in a healthy way. And that is the same with the storms. Like, how can we love and support the people right now that are in fear around this, and have absolute compassion and be the example of how we can love what's coming up right now instead of pushing it away. Yeah.
So I guess to wrap this up, what we've talked about is how to cultivate that ability to be able to face whatever comes your way. And if we're not there yet, that's okay, because we can create plans, but just don't not look at it. Like, it is an opportunity. That's the dark wolf that's saying, hey, I'm here. So don't ignore it, but also, you can feed the empowerment. I've got this. What is it going to take for me to got this? How can I be vulnerable, have the conversation so that if I don't, other people can have me, whatever that is for you. Like, it is worth working on this again and again and every day, because fear is not always conscious, but it does dictate what comes up in our reality. So definitely don't ignore it, and don't fall victim to fear, because it is you can look at fear as vulnerability. I mean, as a victim mentality, or you can look at it as opportunity.
It's exactly the same as the period. We can look at it as potency that's coming up, or we can look at it as a pest that, like, oh my God, I'm female, I have to go through these pains, or like whatever it is, right? We can either be victim to it, or we can be like, there's potency in this. So it's the same with the cyclone coming. Like, what is this bringing up for us as a collective? Like, how can we lean into that? Not ignore that it's there, like, it's there. So let's, have a look at it, whatever's coming up.
Yay for solutions.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and appreciate you being with us and tuning in, and sending you all lots and lots of love.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining us in another episode of Mandula. We want to acknowledge your contribution in the co-creation of our new evolved world.
Sending you all so much love, and until next time, remember, you are the creator.